Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all over the world. I want to talk to you a little bit about my solar experience and how I'm actually now moving into battery backup. I've had this on the plans all year and I've decided to go ahead and pull the trigger. But let's do a little refresher to talk about what we have here. So this was the system that I installed. It's 36 panels, 3 rows each, and there's actually 4 strings that we have set up. 320 watt mono PERC Canadian solar panels. And then I had 2 6 kilowatt Sunny Boy inverters, and I've talked about these before. These have a special function with a secure power supply. So if the grid goes down, and this is a grid tied system, if the grid goes down, each one of those inverters that are in here, there's an outlet that gives you 2 kilowatts of secure power when the sun's out. Remember, this stuff doesn't work when it's raining, when it's cloudy, when it's foggy. It's got limitations. Doesn't work at night. So, but it works during the day when there's at least a reasonable amount of sun. Doesn't work in the shade either. So you got to clear out all your trees and everything. Well, anyways, this works out to an 11.52 kilowatt system. Cost I've got listed here, but it was almost $24,000. Got a utility rebate. This doesn't happen everywhere, but occasionally it does, so that was a big surprise. And then a government subsidy of almost $6,000. This was actually a tax credit, and so the final system cost was $13,550. And at 11.5 kilowatt, that's a little bit over $1 a watt. So that's really good price system. So let me show you, because everybody says, you way overpaid for that. Yeah. I sound like Bill Burr. I just did a little shopping here, and this is the latest, greatest stuff that you can buy. A full kit. It's got all the racking, inverters. This one has power optimizers, which I don't recommend using those. That's one more thing to break, so we didn't use that. But anyways, this is an 11.72 kilowatt system, very similar, $19,315, but you got to have somebody install it. Now, let me suggest it's going to be at least the 50% of the cost of this. So now you got to add another $10,000, you're up to $29,000 minimum. So keep that in mind, but this is something that's out there, fairly similar. Total wattage is what I've got. These are newer technology, so it's got 355 watt solar panels, so it didn't need quite as many panels. All right, so you with me so far? Shake your head or something. Okay, yeah, I can see you're shaking your head. Okay, good. So I did a lot of work on this to try to determine the math if this was going to be anything worthwhile to me. And there's a website you can go to called PV Watts Prediction, and I think it's just called PV Watts, but you create this prediction. You got to put in a whole bunch of information, like my roof has a slant to it. What is the degrees of that slope? You have to put that in. How many kilowatts is your system? Anyways, after you plug and chug all this information, it gives you solar for your area, and it's nearby. Like the actual station that it collects the information from was probably an hour and a half away, but that's fairly close. And so you get it, solar radiation different times a year. And by the way, that you should understand, this is why we have, summer and winter, because different times a year, the earth is tilting, either towards the sun or away from the sun in your location. And that's why you get different watts per meter squared here. And you see this variation that occurs here, cloud cover and everything else, but this gives you an average. So the amount of AC energy that's generated, the energy value per day, I did some other calculations, and then the days and month, but this ended up indicating that I would save approximately $135 a month with my system. So when I look at $135 after $13,500, it says that would be about 8.4 years payback. And so that'd be a return on investment of roughly 12%. That's not bad. Now, considering that the solar panels are going to last in excess of 30 years, the inverters, though, are only going to last an average of maybe say 10 years. So I'm going to have to change those a couple times. So you got to add that cost in. I also want to let you know that I did some things in my house to drop my load, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I got rid of all uh, incandescent and fluorescent lights and put LED in. I also super insulated my attic, and you have to remove any trees that are blocking your solar panels. So you got to hope that you don't have any restrictions from, city or state or whatever laws keep you from doing this. But it doesn't do any good if you get a whole bunch of shading on your panels. So you have to have and preferably facing directly south. That was another thing you had to put in the PV watts, which direction this thing's facing. South is preferable, a little less tilt than what I had on my panels, but mine is actually optimized more for the spring and the fall, but it works well. All right, so let's go on. Let me show you what I've done. I started looking at the performance of my panels, and this is taking all the information every single month. So this is April when I started, but I didn't have the thing online until the end of April when I got all my permits and everything completed. So that's when I could capture all the information. But anyways, I put it in for every single month. All the information is generated, and then I created a summary table. So mine was installed at the end of March, but it wasn't fully completed till towards the end of April. And you can see there was this prediction, and this is what was generated. And when we go and look at this, you can see that it matches pretty good until I get into some of these yellow areas, and this shows the difference. We had some problems in the fall, and it was just bad weather. We had horrendously bad weather last year, and I'm already noticing in October this year I lost 33% production compared to the prediction. And that's just because we had a lot of cloud cover. It was horrible, fog and everything else, rain, you name it. And it kind of wiped me out for October. But it hasn't been quite as bad as last year yet, because November was only down 5%. But overall, so one of the things I did is I did another summary where I could look at 2018 and 2019 side by side. And so I have April through November. And again, with April, I didn't get the usage rate because I hadn't hooked up one piece of equipment yet. That came in later. But in any event, when I look at this, it was really curious for the generation. I had 10,906 kilowatts for 2018 and 10,863 for 2019 generation. And then here's where the prediction is. So curiously, there was only a 42.265 kilowatt difference between the 2 years. That's pretty phenomenal when you think about the variation when you, cloud cover, rain, whatever, temperatures. I forgot to mention earlier, higher temperatures, there's less performance with your solar panels, but it just so happens during the hottest part of the years, we have longer days, so that kind of offsets it. Most people don't think about that, but that's a big difference. So the other thing is when I look at the kilowatt used, I had used more kilowatts in 2018 than I did in 2019, and part of that was the fact that I had done some super insulation, and that made a huge difference here. So anyways, I thought you might like that, and here's a visual of the same data. And you can kind of look at, the 2 years side by side, 18 and 19, and then what the prediction is. And you can see where, like this year we had a problem in June. I got less production because we had a lot of rain. But most of the time these are pretty close together until you see in October, this has fallen way down. But last year, September was down, yet this September was up above the prediction. So it was cooler, and we actually made more production than what was predicted. But anyways, both of these are down for November here, you can see, but this year was better. So anyways, I look at the data a lot of different ways. I'm trying to make sure my performance is still working well. I'm my own power plant, so I'm trying to take full advantage. I do all my laundry during the day. I do our dishes during the day. When we have good solar, we'll hold off and wait until we have good solar before we do our laundry. We try to keep our electric bill as low as possible, and I think that's the prudent thing to do. It helps when you're retired, so you can do this stuff during the day. I was able to take this information and do some calculations for batteries. This indicates that I need, because of the net energy that I use, and I just looked at this year. I ended up using 333 kilowatt hours per month, and so I rounded it up to 400, and that means that I would need 277.8 amp hours per day. So that's the type of battery system that I would need. You're obviously going to oversize this because sometimes you're not going to get charging that day, so you're going to need some for the next day. But anyways, this gives me a rough calculation of 277.8 amp hours per day. So when I go to my batteries, I did something a little bit unique here. I decided to reuse something that was being discontinued. They had these telecom sites that are being dismantled all the time. These batteries fall below like 80%, or they upgrade the telecom sites with new technology, whatever, so the whole structure gets removed, and there's a company, I think there's several of these around the country, that you can go pick these things up for a song. So I did some calculations here. Oops. These racks, which by the way are seismic type racks, you bolt them to the floor, and these are good for tremendous, shock and vibration from like earthquakes and things like that. So it's a fantastic. But those racks are minimum of like $2,000 new, and they hold 20 of these batteries, and it's actually 155 amp hour batteries. This is just a photographic example of what they look like. But anyways, we'll just say roughly say $2K for a rack, and then $400 times 20 batteries. So that'd be $8,000 batteries, $10,000 total. And yet I picked up this used system that was a few years old for $3,500. So $3,500 instead of $10,000. So that gives me a good starting point. Now let me show you the other batteries that are available. And this is a full river AGM 830 amp hour. Oh, I forgot to tell you, this over here is 48 volts at 775 amp hour. So I tried to find something similar. So this is in the 830 amp hour for 48 volts. And the batteries and battery cables here is $9,693, and you still would have to buy a rack for these. And this isn't necessarily a telecom type battery, so you'd have to get a different kind of rack. But I mean, I guess you could build like a heavy duty bookcase type thing to set these in. But I decided, hey, this is kind of cool just to take advantage of something that's already there and pretty good design. So that's what I did. But anyways, you can see the comparable price here would be $96.93 plus a couple grand for a rack if you want to go with the heavy duty thing like I did, which I kind of like because mine has breakers and everything else built into it. This is a pretty sophisticated rack, so I like it. All right, well anyways, the configuration of this is you have 5 strings of 4 batteries. So you can see this would be 4 batteries, like this is 4 batteries. So these 4 are in series, those are in series, those in series, and then you hook them all in parallel. And that's so this is 12 volts in series, that's 48 volts. 5 strings of 48 volts at 155 amp hour gives you 775 amp hour. So this is a very compact design. This is only like a 2 foot by 2 foot space here, and it's about 6 feet tall. So this is a nice compact design, and I can probably set 2 of these racks right next to each other. Now these batteries are not necessarily deep cycle, but I'm going to be using mine initially as only for some backup for basic things, like I can run some washing machine, I can run the dishwasher, I can run some microwave, some lighting, but we're not going to be running dryer. We'll have our freezers and refrigerators on there, and we're really not going to run this down much because this has a huge capacity. No air conditioning, no central heat and air, that kind of thing, but we'll have our wood stoves to keep us warm. And then over time, what I plan on doing is there's going to be new improvements in these batteries, and I may be able to put in, some lithium iron phosphate or whatever the new thing is, and hopefully you won't have to replace batteries every 10 years. That's what we'll find out. But right now, I mean, the life of these batteries is about 10 years on a just basically trickle charge sitting there and just very light use. And so if something happens, I've got a generator where I can charge these back up, and I may only use like 10% of its capabilities. But again, because of what my usage is, it's very little. If that's 775 amp hours, using my normal, where we're doing, washers, the actual dryer, central heat and air, everything, we're going to be dropping this way down. And so I think this is going to be a good design for me, and I'll be able to keep all my freezers and refrigerators and everything running with this. And it's just because I have such a huge solar system, and it's just a question is, will there be enough sunlight to be able to charge this and keep it going? But I do have a generator. So one of the things I'm planning on doing is I've got a generator with 200 gallons of propane, and I will also considering setting up, one of those wood-fired gasifiers, and I could run my generator that way too. So we're looking at several different options here. But I wanted to kind of just introduce you to different ways that you can do things. There's trade-offs in everything we do. But I decided this was the most cost-effective way for me to get into this. And so I'm going to I'll share with you a schematic of how we're going to hook in some associated equipment, and I'm going to be identifying, certain circuits in my house that are going to be tied to this, including probably my computer desk. I'll have backup power for that as well. But it's going to be, it's fairly complex when you add a generator capability and everything. So this is just a quick look so that you can see how things are coming together. I will probably have this effort done in late this year. So we'll see how it works out, but it should be fine. This is a really sophisticated, pretty professional connected system, so I'm happy with this. The battery inverters are also going to be Sunny Boy. They're called Sunny Islands. And I've chose to do that because it will integrate very nicely with my other Sunny systems. I've been happy with the Sunny systems, and right now the Sunny Islands are like half price, so that's another reason why I'm going that route. I've created a lot of redundancy, and I'll show you in the later video of the things that I'm doing that makes this redundant. So, like the way we split my inverters in two, and then we're going to be splitting the Sunny Islands in two, and that's dropping the it's kind of like you derate things by having a much less of a load, and you'll get a higher reliability. This is things I've learned in military type contractor work. So something you can do. You pay a little bit more for it, but maybe instead of 10 years, I'll get 15 years out of it because I'm just not working it as hard. We'll see. But in the meantime, if one fails, I still got half my capability. That's the way I look at it, instead of just being down like most people would. All right, hope everybody's treating you well. I hope you're doing well. Do the best you can. God bless.